Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm your host this week, Mary Barthelson. Our guest tonight is Russell Brooks, member of the Fairfax County History Commission. Russell, thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started and talk more about the History Commission, I'd like to learn more about your story. Could you introduce yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. First and foremost, thank you for having me tonight. So, I arrived in Virginia in 2004. I'm originally from New Jersey, the Garden State. I grew up there and lived most of my life there in Newark, New Jersey, one of the poorest cities in the United States. But it was a good experience. I had a very loving family, and they were constantly encouraging me to look for how I could improve myself and improve my circumstances. And thanks to them, I had the opportunity to go to the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, where I earned a bachelor's degree in political science. And after finishing there, I returned to the New York, New Jersey area. And like yourself, I was interested in television and media. I did some work in public television first, WNYC. That was a public station whose license was owned by the city of New York. It was a combination of public radio and public television. And I had the opportunity to do some work with the television station. I worked in doing features and covering City Hall. Again, it's a very, very small station. But it was a good way to begin. I worked there for approximately about 3 years. And then I had the opportunity to move up to the big time. And I worked for ABC Sports. Did that for 17 years. And during that time, I worked on programs like the Olympics, Super Bowls, World Series, NBA championships, Stanley Cups, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a really good experience. But I did say that I graduated from Penn with a degree in political science. So I was always interested in, at some point, doing public service. And fortunately, I went back to grad school. I received a master's in international relations and international business. And the professors there told me, or suggested, why don't you take the Foreign Service exam? So I did. And fortunately, I passed. And that gave me an opportunity to join the U.S. State Department. But there's also one other factor that encouraged me to join the State Department and come to Washington and get involved here. Was I was in New York doing 9/11. And so I was able to see the tragedy that occurred there on that day up close and personal. I had friends that worked in the Lower Manhattan, one who worked in the World Trade Center, but fortunately he was not there on that date. But I didn't know that at the time, so I was really worried about him. And as a person who spends so much time in New York on a daily basis, it really struck me. And it made me feel that what I was pursuing, that opportunity to work in the State Department and do international relations, was very, very meaningful. That it was something that would give me an opportunity to help my country, to help my fellow man, and hopefully see that nothing like that ever happens again.
Yeah, that's an inspiring story, and thank you so much for your service. Your background is very different from mine, so I'm in the engineering field. So I think it's very interesting that you started out, even though you had an interest in public service, that you went through the television route. So I'm curious how that experience helped prepare you for your role.
That's a good question. Well, the U.S. State Department, or our Foreign Service, is quite different from most other places. I've worked in a number of countries. I've met diplomats from around the world, and they typically start off their careers in diplomatic service very, very early and spend pretty much their entire careers in that field. In the U.S. Foreign Service, we take people of all types of backgrounds. It does not matter what they received a degree in. They can begin their careers very, very early in life, immediately upon usually graduate school, very, very rarely right out of undergraduate. Or they could begin much, much later after they've already spent time, pursuing a particular profession. Oftentimes, Foreign Service officers are teachers, lawyers, sometimes in the media, maybe ex-military, oftentimes ex-Peace Corps. Again, quite different than most other countries, but we are a democracy. We like to believe that all people have something to offer, and we want to give them that opportunity. And I can testify that in our system, we do that. We give people an opportunity to serve if that's something they truly want to do.
That's great. I don't know if you're allowed to tell us where you've been overseas. Is that something you're allowed to talk about?
Sure, it's not a secret. I'm not in one of those agencies. I started off my career in Honduras. From there, I went to Peru. From Peru, I came back to the United States and spent some time working in our Bureau of African Affairs. After that, I went to Iraq. I served in Baghdad for a year, came back to the United States, and then went off to Cote d'Ivoire, that is the Ivory Coast in Africa. I had always wanted to visit Africa and serve there, so it gave me an opportunity to do that. And then I stayed in Africa for 4 more years after I finished my time in Cote d'Ivoire. I served in Nigeria, both in their federal capital, which is Abuja, but also in their cultural capital, Lagos, which is one of the largest cities. Well, I think it is actually maybe the largest city in Africa. No, maybe Cairo is larger. Okay, so one of the largest cities in Africa. And Nigeria is certainly the most populous country in Africa. And that was a wonderful experience to get to see the wide variety of people that live there. And also Nigeria is a great jumping off point. So if I wanted to visit Europe, if I wanted to visit the Middle East, if I wanted to go to Asia, it's a lot easier to do that when you're sort of halfway there as opposed to traveling from the United States.
Yeah, you're definitely a very well-traveled person. I can't say I've been to quite that many countries. And how long of a time period are we talking about that you've been to all these places, and how long were you in the television business?
I was in the television business for 20 years in total, 3 years in public television, 17 for ABC Sports, and I'm approaching that in the Foreign Service. Not quite there yet, but I'm getting closer. So at some point, I guess there'll be time for me to call that quits and then move on to something else.
Well, those are big milestones. I'm curious, you've been able to see a lot of different cultures and countries over time and just see how they change. I'm curious, since you're on the History Commission, what your views are on, or if you can give us insight into how different countries view history and how that affects their perceptions.
Sure. Well, Americans don't quite have an appreciation for this, but we're a very young country as compared to many others around the world. And although Americans come from all over the world, our philosophy is for, to some degree, Americans to sort of leave some of their traditions, some of their cultural aspects from their prior countries behind and become assimilated as Americans. That's sort of the way we traditionally view things. But when you travel to other parts of the world, you really get a clear understanding of how important their history, their culture, their language, maybe their religion, are to them, that it really encapsulates their identity, their sense of community, their sense of what it is to be whomever they believe they are. So to really understand them, it's important to really understand their history. What produced their values? What produced that culture? And how it still influences them today. Sometimes for good, sometimes for not so good things, but nevertheless, if you really get into their history, you'll get a better understanding of what makes them the way they are. And so I found that no matter where I traveled, whether it was Africa or Europe or Asia, and it really gave me a deeper appreciation of the importance of history.
Do you think that America being such a young country and having a short history, what do you think the pros and cons are of that and how that affects us?
For Americans?
For Americans, yeah.
Well, being a young country, that also gives us some ability to learn from the mistakes of others. We know that our founding fathers were very, very much influenced by British history, but also from what they learned about the Romans and the Greeks, etc., to some degree that formed the reasons for why we developed the democracy, the style of government that we have. So that is one aspect. On the other hand, we carry some of the baggage from some of the maybe mistakes of others as well. We all know about our unfortunate history when it comes to the slave trade, something that basically was brought here by others, that we continued for a very, very long time. That is something that is not necessarily a great thing that was carried over from others. I can cite other things. Maybe I could describe things such as maybe some of the stereotypes that we have about other groups. So there's been good and there's been bad, but it makes us who we are.
Well, I'm very curious to learn more about your work. We will be right back with Russell for more after the break.
Caitlin, be serious. No, take the oath. Come on. I'm totally taking this seriously. Okay, I'm ready. You may begin. I pledge that I will never meet in person with anyone I first met online without checking with my parent or guardian. And furthermore, if my parent or guardian agrees to the meeting, it will be in a public place and my parent or guardian must come along. Do you pinky swear? I do.
When you teach your kids about internet safety, they'll pass it on. For more information, go to cableclicksmart.org.
Dare to load their minds. Dare to explore. Dare to STEM. Learn more at She Can STEM.
You're not the kind of guy that makes the girls all sigh.
2 for $3.
They never turn their heads and look when you walk by. 'Cause it's the little things.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Helping.
What a nice young man.
Pass it on.
My goodness.
You are not what you got.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
I better get out of here. Ooh.
Get it.
Get it.
Get it.
Give your town a reason to celebrate, because every Goodwill item you bring home brings job training and more to your community. Goodwill, bring good home.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host this week, Mary Barthelson. Our guest tonight is Russell Brooks, member of the Fairfax County History Commission. Thank you so much for being here again. I'm really enjoying learning all about your background and how you got to where you are today. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about history. Have you always had an interest in history like you do now?
Well, maybe not as much as I do now, but I can recall even as a child, my second grade teacher introduced me to historical figures like George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or Willie Mays. Those were some of the books that I read at that age that still stand with me today. I can remember all the stories from that George Washington book, you know, chopping down the cherry tree, never telling a lie, how he fell ill after, you know, going out riding, and unfortunately that led to his death. But I remember all those things so well, and I read that book when I was maybe about 7 years old. So obviously I've learned a lot more about history. I certainly hope I have in the years since that time. But yeah, I started off very, very young, and it has stayed with me.
Something that I took for granted growing up, since I grew up in Virginia, was just how close all of our historical landmarks are. So we could go to DC and see the museums, we could go to Jamestown, Williamsburg. We went on so many different field trips and just like learned all about our history. And even when we were reading our history textbooks, it seemed so central to Virginia's story. And so I think I always had an interest in history from that. But you moved here, and now you've joined the History Commission. So I'm curious, if you can tell us more about what the role of the History Commission is.
Absolutely, love to. We live here in Fairfax County, and the Fairfax County History Commission was founded in 1969. Its principal purpose is to advise the Board of Supervisors on matters involving history and historical preservation, but it's also to raise awareness, to promote an appreciation for history and cultural preservation, and promote that among the public writ large, to encourage them to both learn more about the wonderful history of this county, and to identify, document, record aspects of that history for future generations.
And I understand that Supervisor Rodney Lusk, is it an appointment, or how did you end up joining?
Well, I've since I returned to the United States from my last overseas assignment, I was looking for ways to get involved in my community. I moved here and decided to settle in Fairfax County. I really love this area. It has a lot of things that I was looking for in a comfortable neighborhood. And as I should have mentioned, when I was overseas, I engaged in a lot of community projects over there, whether it was helping out our American Embassy community in various ways, organizing social functions, whether it was helping out non-governmental organizations in those countries, like maybe promoting STEM education or the education of women and girls, as an example. And when I returned to the United States, I wanted to continue to do some of those type of things. So I was looking for opportunities to get involved in my community. Fortunately, Supervisor Lusk was willing to hear me out about what I wanted to do and why. And he offered me some options for how I could contribute to the community on one of the boards or commissions that form up the Fairfax County government. One of them was the History Commission. And I said, yes, I think I could do that. I love that subject. I need to learn more about it. He gave me some advice on, how to take a look at the website and take a look at what they do. Encouraged me to speak to some of the current members of the History Commission. And once I did that, I decided that yes, this is something that would both interest me, and I felt I could actually make a contribution toward. And so he nominated me for the commission, and the Board of Supervisors approved that appointment back in February of this year. And so I'm really glad that he had that much confidence in me to give me that opportunity. And I think I have contributed, and I am very much enjoying this opportunity to give back.
Have you taken anything that you've learned overseas and brought it to the commission?
I think I have. Number one, Fairfax County has its commitment to, One Fairfax, its appreciation for diversity and equity. Well, again, having served overseas in a variety of places and meeting all types of different people, different backgrounds, different religions, etc., I really have an appreciation for diversity, what that brings to communities, and the fact that diversity should be celebrated. And that certainly is the philosophy of the county government. That is the philosophy of the History Commission. And we sort of bring that out in many different ways in the different activities and events that we pursue.
Yeah, so I'm someone who has a very multicultural family. So my stepmom's from Iran. I have an uncle from Argentina whose family was originally from Syria. So we have a very mixed and multicultural household. And I also grew up going to our elementary schools, which have people from all different countries. And so I thought that was very normal and typical of America.
Not all places in America. Our country has become much more diverse than it used to be many years ago. But there are still parts of the country where, there is not a lot of diversity. And I don't say that to disparage any place. I'm saying that because one of the benefits of my time during those 17 years in ABC Sports is that I had the opportunity to travel to a wide range of places in our own country. And that actually turned out to be a great asset during my time overseas, because oftentimes foreign audiences were extremely interested in America. What they knew about America often came from movies, TV shows. Oftentimes that's not really representative of America. I mean, we're not quite as violent as you see on some of these TV shows, Everything is not New York and LA. There is, places in between. And so my ability to talk about those places due to the fact that I had traveled to them, whether it was to do a football game in Iowa City or going down to the University of Alabama for a football game, doing boxing matches in North Dakota. So I saw a good variety of places, and I could talk to them about what Americans are really like. The variety of foods we eat, the variety of music we listen to, et cetera, et cetera. And oftentimes foreign audiences found that just fascinating. Now, in your case, as you described the diversity in your own family and experience, it sounds so much like the recent history conference that the commission sponsored. It was Fairfax County, One Fairfax County, a county of different nations. And what that slogan was supposed to encapsulate is the variety of peoples plural, that we have here in Fairfax County. Whether we're talking about maybe the Peruvian population, or we're talking about the variety of Asian populations, et cetera, that we have right here in Fairfax County. It's fascinating. We're enriched by it, and it's something that we really should celebrate. And at least on the History Commission, we do.
Yeah, that's great. I tend to see, because of my family, I tend to see immigrant stories as American stories, even though they're a little bit newer. And I don't think everyone quite has that perspective. I know we have a lot of subcultures throughout the U.S., being such a large country. So there are some areas which, they're not quite as diverse, and they have their own culture. So it's very interesting that people overseas are fascinated by that. I'm curious if they thought that we were more interesting or less interesting based on your experience.
They find us much more interesting than people might imagine. Yes. Oftentimes what they instinctively know about America is, Beyonce or Taylor Swift, okay? But what's the most popular music in like Liberia? Country music. Okay? You look at them and go, what? Yes.
Like American country music?
American country music.
Like John Denver country music?
Well, I think they would probably pick a more current artist than John Denver. But I'm just trying to point out the fact that you'd be surprised as to what people find interesting and fascinating overseas. But at the same time, now Americans are really, really interested in aspects of foreign culture. Whether we're talking about like the music called Afro beats, which I heard all the time in Nigeria as an example. But Burna Boy, one of their leading artists, now he's big here in the United States, and he's selling out Madison Square Garden or other venues of that size because it works both ways. Americans are finding the music and cultures of other places to be of interest to them. It's not just the fact that you can go anywhere in the United States and find a Chinese restaurant, okay? But it's also that they are very, very interested in music from other places, fashions from other places, etc., etc.
I've definitely seen that as well. So it's funny you mentioned Burna Boy because my brother listens to him, and he loves that genre of music. And we have like so much K-pop stuff coming here as well. So I think it's really great as a cultural exchange to just understand each other. So we're about to go to break, but I want to talk more with you about that when we get back. Stick around, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our guest, Russell Brooks.
Nice going, Spencer. I can't believe we broke Old Man Hennessy's window.
Correction, dude. You broke. I just threw the ball.
This is really bad. What are we gonna do?
We? Go to the door, ask for the ball back.
Are you serious?
It's my ball, Myrtleback.
You're so dead. I'd run away.
Yeah, to Uruguay.
Kiss your life goodbye. Sorry.
Let's go. See you, dude. See ya. You remember me and you're well.
Nice one. Some friends you are.
Keep smiling, keep shining.
Hi. Hi. Tell him it was an accident. And we can fix the window. Come on. I'll come with you.
Loyalty. Pass it on.
You go first.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Wanted some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about ripped off life. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Yeah.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host this week, Mary Barthelson. We are joined by Russell Brooks, member of the History Commission. Thank you again for joining us. I'm really enjoying hearing about the History Commission. I'd like to talk to you more about what some of the priorities of the commission are. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, I'd love to. Well, I mentioned that our principal purpose, besides advising the Board of Supervisors about matters pertaining to history, is to raise that awareness, to promote anything of interest to the public as it pertains to history and historical preservation. So we have a range of different programs to accomplish that goal. I'll just run down a few of them. So as an example, we're very, very proud of our African American inventory, history inventory, the sites, the people, the events that formed the African American experience here in Fairfax County. We have an inventory of historical sites. We maintain a catalog that is now roughly over 350 different places in Fairfax County of historical significance. Whether we're talking about a bridge, we're talking about a church, we're talking about a burial ground, maybe a school, places that are of historical significance and therefore should be preserved and certainly recognized. We have history markers placed in different parts of the county. Again, to bring attention to the fact that that place has some significance. Maybe it was a particular historical figure that had some connection to that particular place. I remember recently we placed a marker in a neighborhood where we were commemorating the fact that two of the neighborhood's residents were very involved in the desegregation movement here in Virginia and in our county in particular. So we want to bring attention to that fact. The county can provide small research grants to people who are involved in researching history or cultural preservation. So we do a wide variety of things of that nature, all geared toward, as I said, raising awareness and promoting appreciation for history and historical preservation.
I definitely appreciate that work. Being born in the 90s, I feel like some of the things I've learned about in the history textbooks, they seem like a closed book, but there's so many people in our community that have lived through those things. So I actually spoke to Delegate Plum on our program a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about living through the desegregation of schools. So I think it's really important that we have dedicated people who are focused on preserving that. And I imagine that's quite a bit of information. So is this stored in like archives? Or do we have like a giant library or something where we put all of it? Is it online?
It's a combination of different ways that we do it. I spoke about the markers. I talked about the inventory of places, but also we're recording oral histories from some of the people who, again, lived through these moments in history. And by speaking to them and recording their stories, we're able to maintain them for, future generations. So whether it's that or, as I described, the conferences that we're organizing, the fact that there is a formerly colored school that has been maintained in its pretty much close to its original condition is another way in which we're showing our appreciation for the history in the county and the fact that others need to learn about that history.
Can you share a little bit about some of the accomplishments of the commission? I imagine with all the work that you've done that there's quite a few.
There are quite a few. I would again point back to the recent conference, the fact that it had such wonderful participation, that it really demonstrated again the diversity that we have in the county. I think we were all very, very proud of that, and it serves as a benchmark for future conferences of that type. As I mentioned, we believe that the diversity in the county is something to be celebrated, and we're looking constantly for opportunities to do that. I also think the diversity that we have on the History Commission is also something that we're very, very proud of. It's roughly about 20 members. They represent all the different geographical communities in our area. As an example, I represent the Franconia section. I'm one of 2 Franconia representatives on the commission. And so we are covering our bases from the standpoint of both geography as well as other forms of diversity on the commission. All the members have this real appreciation or even reverence for history and its importance. And I think certainly all communities need to have folks who are geared toward doing that. When the county started this in 1969, I think that's what they were looking for people to do. And these many, many years later, I think we're still living up to that mandate.
As most people who have lived in Virginia for more than a couple of years, I've noticed that we have a tendency to name almost everything after a very short period of our history, the Confederacy. It feels like every street, building had a Confederate name, and that's something that Fairfax County has been looking to change. So I imagine that the History Commission has been involved with some of those advising decisions. Can you talk about if there's anything going on with that still?
Well, I can point to a couple of things. One, as you rightly said, there are quite a few names of Confederate figures on different locations throughout the county. And one of the requests by the Board of Supervisors a few years ago was to just document the number of Confederate named places, streets, schools, etc., that existed within the county, and the commission played a big role in that. Now, I was not on the commission at that time, so I can't take any credit, but if you look at our website, you'll see that we did perform that task. We provided that information to the county, and we know that the county took that into consideration as it decided to at least change some names. The former Lee School became John Lewis. We know that. We know that some highways were changed. But we also know that in Fairfax County, there's a huge number. And so if they are going to be changed, it won't happen overnight, but it's good to see that we're making progress. And hopefully in the years to come, we will completely remove those names and name those places after, in my opinion, some people who are a bit more deserving. Now, the other thing I would point out is that for most of these places. It's actually a fairly recent occurrence within the span of history. It's a fairly recent occurrence that these places, these streets, were named after these figures. I say that because I did a little research on at least one incident pertaining to the naming of a street in Alexandria City after one of the Confederate generals, Earl Van Dorn. And it turned out that that particular street was formerly actually named after President Lincoln. But in the 1950s, when there was quite a bit of activity in our country, you know, pushing for increased civil rights for African Americans, including here in Virginia, those who were more resistant to that movement looked for ways in which they could demonstrate their resistance and hostility. And one of the methods that they chose was to change the name of certain streets from figures that they associated with the North, or the wrong side of the Civil War in their minds. I think it was Lincolnia was changed to Van Dorn. And I think there were other instances of that as well. And so, again, from the 1950s to now, seems like a long time, but actually that's a fairly short time. That shows that if we could change the names then, I think we can manage to change them again.
Yeah, we have such a rich history in Virginia. I feel like we should have so many accomplished individuals of different fields and backgrounds to admire and name things after. I'm biased. I'd love to name stuff after women in STEM. We do have some prominent figures from Virginia that we could name things after and maybe show just more broadly our history. And it's very interesting that a lot of these renamings happened during the Civil Rights Movement, but I guess that shouldn't be too much of a surprise that it came from a cultural backlash to that. Growing up, I kind of had the perception that that had always been the case, at least since the Civil War, but it wasn't.
Correct.
So I'd like to talk to you more about some of the work of the Commission when we're back from the break. Stick around, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more from Russell Brooks after our break.
There. Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why did the girl ask the mushroom to dance? Because he was a fun guy. What do you call a pig that knows karate? Pork chop. Why was the basketball court all wet? Why? Because the players kept dribbling all over it. Can I tell you another one? So how does a tissue dance? Put a little boogie on it. What's Beethoven's favorite fruit? Banana. What is a boxer's favorite drink? Fruit punch.
Mom, I got it. What are you doing in there?
I got stuck.
Are you a dog?
I wouldn't do that. Have you seen the pliers? Where'd you find those?
It's not your birthday.
Sorry.
Bye, Grandpa.
Bye, Grandpa.
Take care of yourself.
What are you doing? What are you looking for?
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Mary Barthelson. We are joined by Russell Brooks of the Fairfax County History Commission. Russell, you're on the advocacy committee of the commission. What is the mandate of that committee?
Okay. Well, first, let me explain that the commission has several committees, all geared toward pursuing some aspect of the commission's work. So I mentioned previously that we are responsible for advising on the creation of these historical markers in various parts of the county to, again, bring awareness about maybe a particular figure or place, etc. What committee has to evaluate the candidates for those markers? We have to evaluate the candidacy for places to go into that inventory of historical sites. So we have different committees within the commission to do those sort of things. We also have a committee that is charged with bringing greater awareness about the fact that we have a history commission in Fairfax County. Many people are not aware of that. Many people are not aware of what we are intended to do. And so we have an advocacy committee. And I guess you would say that what I'm doing here tonight is some of the work of the advocacy committee. But we also make our presence known at the different festivals and markets, etc., that take place throughout the county that bring people together and then gives us an opportunity to explain what we do. We can set up a booth, table, etc. We'll have materials to hand out to people. We'll hand out our cards. We can give them other things that represent the History Commission and thereby imprint ourselves into their minds as another service that the county provides, again, to raise awareness about a history. And Fairfax County has a fantastic history, whether we're talking about its role during the Revolutionary War or what took place here during the Civil War, what took place here during the Civil Rights Movement, or if we go further than that, about the Native American populations that lived here well before we established a United States. All those things make up the history, the culture that is Fairfax County. And I'll go on to say that the new arrivals into Fairfax County, immigrant populations, they're also making their own contributions to the history of Fairfax County. And it is our role to bring that out to people. And as a member of the advocacy committee, I think that's something that we very much enjoy doing.
That's wonderful. So you're the bridge, essentially, between the work and the public, so that everyone knows that we have this great committee serving our community.
I certainly like to think so.
So we talked about the Confederacy and civil rights and how that's a big part of everything going on in the county right now and a big part of the history conversation. But you mentioned Native Americans. Can you talk about some of the work that the commission has done, I guess, cataloging our Native American history, or how much of the commission's focus is on that compared to newer history, as you mentioned, immigrant stories coming in?
I think it's an area in which we are looking at doing more to bring awareness to that aspect of our history. One of the things that we do at the start of each of our commission meetings is to read a statement in front of, at the beginning of each and every one of our meetings, paying tribute, honoring the Native American tribes that were the original, I guess, owners, if you want to put it that way, of the land in which we now reside. So we pay that respect to them. But we want to do more than just make symbolic statements. We also want to look at what programs we can do to, again, honor them. At our recent history conference, we had someone there who told some of that story, and I think that is what we want to continue to do more and more, to make everyone aware of that community's contribution. I know that oftentimes it may be overlooked because we see it as being, I guess, far in our past, but we can't settle for doing that. We have to look for opportunities to make sure that we know the story for everyone, every group who contributed to the great county that we now have.
Is the priorities of the commission, are they established by the Board of Supervisors, or is it more the committee making the decisions about what the priorities are going to be, or both?
Well, I think it's sort of a combination. Remember, we are an advisory body to the Board of Supervisors, but I think they also want us to show a certain amount of creativity in how we go about highlighting our programs and exhibiting our benefits to our community.
Wonderful. And I know you mentioned this briefly. I know there's a push to rename the Van Dorn Metro Station. Can you tell us what is going on with that campaign right now?
Sure. I'm going to take off my commissioner hat, if we could call it that, and just speak now as a private citizen as opposed to a member or a commissioner on the History Commission. So I know of a resident in the Springfield area. It's a very impressive young woman. She's a sophomore at Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. She told me that her father explained to her that the metro station is named after a Confederate general by the name of Earl Van Dorn. He was a general in the Confederacy. I think he was a cavalry officer, originally from Arkansas, and fought basically in the Western campaigns during the Civil War. Her father explained that to her, and she asked the very natural question as to why is the metro station, why is the street named after him? Okay. And that's what's great about young people, because they don't necessarily accept what is, they ask why. And if the answer isn't good, they also will ask, why can't we change that? And when I heard this story, it brought me back to my youth. And I don't want to sound like I'm ancient, but I have gray hair for a reason. But I was inspired by similar young people when I was closer to her age. I was inspired by the young African American men and women who led the civil rights movement. I always amaze people when I explain that when Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was leading the Montgomery bus boycott, he was only 20 plus years old, extremely young. When John Lewis delivered his speech at the March on Washington, again, he was around 20 years old. Okay? When people were leading the voter education programs in Mississippi at the risk of losing their lives, we're talking about very young people. And we all remember those who rode those freedom buses at risk of their lives into the Deep South, black and white. These were extremely young people. So when Taylor Brickman, told me what she wanted to do, that she had started this petition online to get people to sign, to ask for the metro station to be changed. I thought of those young people, and I thought I wanted to do whatever I could do to support her. Now again, I'm not speaking as a commissioner, I'm speaking as a citizen. And so I think she's doing a wonderful thing. I think it's a effort worth supporting. At last count, I think I saw maybe 200 or so people who have already signed the petition. And I would encourage the audience out there to do the same, to look for that petition on change.org. I think it's called Help Rename the Van Dorn Metro Station. Look it up, join, participate, help this impressive young woman achieve her goal, help her contribute to the betterment of our community, help her contribute to the young people in years to come who will be able to see a better example of what we have accomplished in our country on a street name, on a metro station, and not continue the injustice that unfortunately continues to today.
I'm not quite college age, but I do love to see young people, especially young women, out making change. We talked about the desegregation of schools, and Delegate Plum mentioned that it was actually a young high school student who led the student protests that sparked the initiative to get schools desegregated. So I do think that we can be a force for good and a force for change. And I understand people who say, well, this is our history, as difficult as it is, like, we should be able to talk about it. But we've moved forward as a country thanks to the contribution of some people. But if we're a better country because someone lost their battles, then I don't personally think it's appropriate for us to be creating grand imagery around them and naming things after them. There's so many other inspiring people out there that we can take lessons from, who we should be giving that position to. So thank you so much for mentioning that and talking to us today. Thank you all for being here with us. And that is all for tonight. Be sure to tune in next week and have a wonderful evening.